Hi everyone, it's Vanilla. I have something special just for you. As you watch this super awesome, amazing video today, you'll be seeing me. I so graciously decided that you needed more of me. Don't you know that at least 10 minutes of vanilla a day can make you live 100 years longer? Don't fact check me on that. I've been doing videos on PokeRogue for the past few weeks, but as soon as Google pushed me the notification that Emerald Rogue 2.0 had come out, I knew I would have to be all over it. Now, keep in mind, I don't know if any of you get these notifications, but I have a Google Fold, and 99% of the time, it loves to just push me random articles about stuff I'm not interested in. I swear, even though I let Google track everything about me, including what I had for lunch last Thursday at 2 p.m., it still pretends like we're complete strangers. No, I don't think I will read how fast do dragon fruit trees grow. Thanks, but no thanks. So let's talk about what Emerald Rogue is. Technically, it's called a ROM hack. Now, I'm gonna put on my hall monitor uniform and inform you all that hacking a ROM is an illegal offense and you should never ever do that. And now I'm gonna put back on my vanilla uniform. I really don't think I'm cut out for law enforcement. We're gonna call Emerald Rogue a mod since it sounds better. Don't at me. To summarize the game for those of us who have short attention spans, Emerald Rogue is a roguelike where you crawl through instance floors that have randomized rooms. Your team will be different each time you play, and by default, your items and trainer interactions will be different each time. You also won't be able to carry Pokemon or items to different runs. I believe that's called meta progression, and it's turned off by default. Well, maybe I'm bad at explaining things, but that just sounds like PokeRogue to me. So sorry for you short attention folk, but it's gonna have to be the long explanation instead. Emerald Rogue is a really unique mod with in-depth dungeon crawling mechanics that enhance existing gameplay loops. During your adventure, you have a bunch of options to choose from depending on your randomized path. You can catch Pokemon, fight trainers, go on a game show, and buy items, just to name a few. The end goal of a run, I think, is to get to the Elite Four and climb on the champion, but no worries, even with the base rules, it's probably going to take you a little while to get there. There is an overworld you return to at the end of each run, and there are upgrades you can purchase for your town, and it's pretty cool because you get to choose where unique buildings are built. You complete quests which reward you with building supplies and money, and you can use the building supplies to upgrade or build new buildings. Now, to describe the dungeon crawling gameplay loop in the most simplest of terms using the default rules, you begin a new adventure from scratch each time, not carrying Pokemon and items back to the overworld with you once you white out. You also permanently lose your Pokemon in a run if they faint, and you can't revive them using revives since they're not sold in shops. There's a level cap on each floor, so when you fight the Mighty Trainer at the end, you will have the same level Pokemon as them, and you need to beat the Mighty Trainer to move to the next floor. And that's the general idea. When you start the game, it has you choose your character, and this determines from what generation your Mighty Trainer battles will be from and who your rivals are. I chose Celine, so I ended up fighting Gen 7 trainers, and Hau and Gladion were my rivals. This reintroduced me to a lot of characters I sadly forgot about. How could I forget about Grandpa Hala, the sweetest man ever, or Kiawe, the coolest, most big brother-coded gym leader? Most of the time, if provoked, I will give a wishy-washy answer about which generation is my favorite. And I know it may trigger your fight or flight response, but Gen 7 is my favorite. I love the aesthetic of Alola, as well as the Pokemon introduced in that generation. Beware is just so huggable, but unfortunately is a prime example of if not friend, then why friend-shaped. It also kind of looks like a pill, so do what you will with that information. Once we're done lamenting on the past, we're then introduced to Professor Elm, who starts chatting with us. This also happens to be the point where I promptly stopped listening and was mindlessly pressing the A button. I then regained consciousness when a hiker lady came into the lab crying that Pokemon are attacking the town, or something. Oh, did I mention you can name your town? I named mine Donut Land. I was hungry, what can I say? We then go to inspect the world-ending crisis, and this is where we are able to pick from 3 completely random Pokemon as our starter. Not really a crisis if you ask me, but who am I to judge? That's basically where the game stops holding your hand. Now it's up to you to determine what your goal is and how you're gonna get there. Do you want to collect Pokemon, beat the champion, or achievement hunt? Well, ideally we'd do all 3 at once, but it's not really that easy. Maybe after all this time of playing these easier generations, I'm starting to grow soft. If I look in the mirror, it's not like I see someone whose first gen was Gen 3. Sheesh, I'm gonna have to get a new mirror. But that's besides the point. What I mean to say is that this game is hard. Is it as hard as PokeRogue? I think that depends on who you ask. And since I posed the question, and I'm talking to myself, I would say yes. Even with the default settings, which you can set to be easier or harder depending on your preferences, this game is still really difficult. One of my biggest challenges isn't with any of the mechanics. I just get genuinely fatigued trying to remember the type matchups, and even the typing of some Pokemon. I'm sorry I can't remember the difference between Sneasel, Hisuian Sneasel, and Sneasler. Each time I go into an important encounter, which is most battles in this game, I spend a solid amount of time just trying to go through the type weaknesses of the Pokemon in the battle in my head. And when your brain has 1 GB of RAM trying to process 100 GB of information, you can imagine the amount of agony I face each time. But one of the many things that Emerald Rogue has on Pokerogue is that it adds many of the quality of life improvements that the newer generations introduce. And of course, one of my favorites is the addition of the effectiveness of your Pokemon's move on the defender. This saves me so much time and usually reminds me of the typing of the enemy. Emerald Rogue also gives you fairly regular access to shops where you can buy potions and other useful items. In the market, you can also buy Pokeballs and TMs, which gives you a bit more freedom to play how you want. Emerald Rogue doesn't necessarily have the same reliance on held items that Pokerogue does. In Emerald Rogue, I don't feel like I'm not going to be able to win an important encounter just because I wasn't able to pick up 2 Calciums, a Reviver Seed, a Silk Scarf, and 3 Irons. But if you like living on the edge and being stressed out about every single encounter, I suppose Pokerogue may be more your speed. I personally don't have the willpower to subject myself to that for long periods of time, but hey, you do you. If you've watched my videos before, you know that you're going to get to see this game from an interesting perspective. I went over 10 hours of playing this game before I even realized that the Pokemon you get from each run are introduced back into the overworld in a little garden area. You can catch those Pokemon and then introduce them to the daycare, or put them in the PC so they can't escape. This means that if RNGesus was unkind to you when you picked your starter, you're not permanently stuck with a handicap. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about the dungeon crawling mechanics and how a run can play out. We're going to define a floor as something that has a bunch of branching paths with a mighty trainer battle at the end. On these paths, you have the possibility to enter rooms. Some examples of rooms include battle simulations, routes, legendary encounters, game shows, dark deals, Pokemarts, the daycare, and the battle item shop. We're going to talk about routes since they're some of the more common rooms and where you can catch Pokemon to add to your team. Routes have difficulties: calm, average, and tough. The name will indicate things about the route, and an example of this would be a calm, weird route. I'm not exactly sure what each part means, but my guess is that calm implies that there will be fewer trainers and items, and I believe the weird label is an indicator as to what kinds of Pokemon may be present. If you're on a wet route, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to encounter water-type Pokemon. The more floors you climb, the more extreme these routes become. Tough routes will be just that, tough. There will be a lot of trainers and they're going to have tough Pokemon. The trade-off, however, is that you can find some pretty good items if you're lucky. I don't have any proof, but I think the items I got on the tough routes were usually more useful than the few I found on the easier routes. I haven't been able to quite figure out the pattern yet, but at a certain point you also have to fight your rival a few times. So if you enter a tough route and struggled through it, you may still have to fight your rival at the end. And nothing is more sour than Gladion calling you annoying and lame while you only have 2 Pokemon left and you know he's going to sweep. Call me whiny, it's okay, I won't be offended, but I am sick of getting kicked around in these games. Honestly, I swear they exist to punish you. I can see the game literally pause before encounters with trainers. And you may say, alright Vanilla, get the tinfoil hat off, put on a helmet, and your big boy pants. These games aren't meant to be easy. And you know what? I bet you're really fun at parties, cause this sucks. There's no reason why Triathlete Tegan should just so happen to be able to counter every single one of my 6 Pokemon with her single Pokemon. It should be literally impossible. But the pause before the encounter is the game thumbing through the Pokedex, considering every single weakness my team has in like 3 seconds. And then pooping out the most OP combination in history. Ice, fighting, dark, and ground type moves are the most common combinations known to man in this game. And let me tell you why, because they'll beat literally anything. It does not matter what your team is, and I'm here to tell you once again, just like in Pokerogue, the only stat that matters is speed, because this AI knows exactly if it's able to beat you. Let's look at an example real quick, alright? I'm fighting my big bro Kiawe, and he's got a Salazzle, which is not really cool to begin with. But Salazzle knows Nasty Plot, which increases special attack, and the all-knowing, omnipotent Kiawe will be able to determine if I can OTK him. If he knows he can OTK me, he'll go for whatever move will kill. If he can't OTK me, but it'll take me at least 2 turns to kill Salazzle, he'll use Nasty Plot once. If it'll take me more than 2 turns to kill Salazzle, he'll go for the 2 Nasty Plot stacks. Yeah, it's that telegraphed. And you may say, duh, Vanilla, just switch out if it's so easy to guess. And alright, either way, Salazzle is going to have 1 or 2 stacks of Nasty Plot, and I don't know about you, but that sounds like a full sweep to me. This also assumes you didn't pay the fee to preview who the gym leader is, which may mean that you may already be leading with a Pokemon that is weak to Salazzle, for example. As far as I'm aware, the Pokemon that these mighty trainers use remain consistent. If you encounter them earlier, they'll have less Pokemon, but the general lineup will be consistent throughout playthroughs, which is no help at all, but at least they're not generated just to mess with you. Since the Pokemon you encounter en routes are pretty much random, you're most likely going to end up with a bunch of odd Pokemon on your team in the beginning of your run. My longest runs were around 3 hours apiece, and trust me, it gets frustrating to get to the final branching path and realize you're gonna have the worst time ever in a gym battle. It's even worse when you think you've got it in the bag because you've got a diverse team that has a variety of moves and abilities. But you eventually learn that everything is weak to either ice, fighting, dark, or ground. And let's say your route ends up only having ground-type Pokemon, and it's the only route on the floor, you're gonna have to square up with the gym leader and pray they're not going to have a team that can sweep you. But remember, all these trainers have deadly combos, so you can forget that. Sorry, friend. So it would probably look really good for this video if I was able to make it to the Elite Four and maybe even beat the champion. But unfortunately I wasn't able to do that. On my longest run I was able to beat the 6th gym, so that's kind of close, right? I played for around 15 hours so far, and I think that might have something to do with it. I mean, the obvious skill canyon is definitely an issue, but there are a couple of other things to consider. Buildings play a huge part in the preparation process for dungeon crawling because you can pre-equip your starter with battle items, and you can also purchase healing items to bring with you. Additionally, it's important to know that you can adjust your Pokemon's IVs in the overworld using Pokeblocks, but keep in mind that means you need to buy both the berry fields and the place to make the Pokeblocks. You can't make Pokeblocks without berries, Goofy. I made the mistake of purchasing the daycare first because my mind was like, hee hee, baby Pokemon go brr. And I'm not entirely sure how the daycare works either, I'm gonna be quite honest. You can have Grandpa go look for eggs for you, for Pokemon that you've caught previously, and Grandma will hold on to your Pokemon for you, but if you give her a girl and a boy, they don't make an egg. So I don't know why she's holding on to them, but at least you can watch them hop around in the field. With that in mind, I think you should most definitely purchase the market first, and maybe even the upgrades that come with it. The upgrades give you access to more items, and that will definitely be super useful. I don't really have that luxury anymore, so I have to try to complete as many quests as I can to get more building materials. I have nearly 50% of the quests completed, which I'm pretty proud of honestly, but now they're harder to complete since that's how difficulty curves work. I want to finish this video by talking about what I think of the game. I really enjoy Emerald Rogue, and I found myself really having to think throughout each of my playthroughs, and there are many options to choose from on each floor, so each run is very unique and dynamic. I like how the runs take a decent amount of time, so you're able to really feel like you're progressing. This strategy isn't exclusive to the dungeon crawling either. There's a huge amount of planning that can also happen in the overworld. I also appreciate the amount of Pokemon that are in the game. Obviously, it's not going to be all 1,000 plus Pokemon, but the Pokemon that are added are very diverse and from different generations. I'm super happy to see a lot of my favorite Pokemon from Gens 8 and 9. I don't think any of the complaints I had while playing were flaws with the game. I think they were just things that annoyed me personally. If you're looking for something that's a bit slower paced and requires a bit more forethought than Pokerogue, I think you might really like Emerald Rogue. But hey, that's just my opinion. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I can't even explain how grateful I am for all of you who stop in to watch my videos. I work really hard on each upload, and I'm so happy to see new people join my small community. I'm so close to 100 subscribers, which is a huge goal of mine, and I can't believe I'm almost there. So if I made you laugh and you liked my content, if you could give me a like and subscribe, that would be amazing. And please comment down below what your favorite Pokemon is. Mine is Wooloo, and I hope to see you again next time. Okay, bye!